Good day, it's Brian. It is the Art of Startup War. We are here, and every single week, I do one thing and one thing only. This is my pay it forward gift to investors. Anybody listening to this podcast who is not an investor, you are a casual observer, God bless you, you're welcome. But you won't find this that much use because this podcast is for folks who are looking to invest in the earlier stage startups who have the highest probability of being able to break through and build a unicorn or something of the same ilk, right? A company that's going to be valued in the billions or the tens of billions of dollars. And what I do during this 30 minutes is share with you my diligence on the founders and on the company so you get a really good feel as to what an institutional investor, who's one of the largest investors by deal numbers anywhere in the United States, the process that I went through, and I give it to you. And I give it to you for a couple of reasons. One, because I love the early stage startup space, and I believe that more and more investors, both experienced and non-experienced, should be in this space. I believe, number two, you need education from other investors. It's the most helpful thing you can possibly get, rather than go this road alone and hope that you made the right decision. But you also shouldn't just take my word for it. You should look at the discussion that we have here, and then you should do your own diligence, you should do your own advice, and you should bring in other investors as well, even if you are experienced. So today I've got a phenomenal entrepreneur. I think it was a no-brainer for me. Let me put it that way. And I'm going to explain why as we dig into it. It's going to be a mixture of experience. It's going to be a mixture of the product. It's going to be a mixture of the folks who actually need this product. And on such a crazy level, it doesn't matter if there's a recession or no recession. There is zero choice. Organizations have to use this product. And in a way, the worse things get, the more they have to use the product. So, okay, let me bring in Thomas from Syccure, and we're going to start and we're going to kick in real deep. Thomas, great to see you, buddy.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
And I'm telling you, I saw you the first time and I met with you the first time, and I called Jonathan like 30 seconds afterwards. I'm like, get that guy. Immediately after, forget everything else. Like, we dug in and we went in and we looked at the software and we looked at like how it compared to competitors. But I said, get that guy, because you're a winner and you're a killer. And that comes from, and I want to start with this point because I want to underline it for everybody who's watching. Everybody's got ideas. Everybody's got wonderful implementation plans about how they're going to do stuff. And I say this with no disrespect. I only say it in the form that if you're an investor, that's no good to you, right? You want to have people who are killers, who are executors, who have done it. So Thomas has had multiple company, multiple exits. I want to dig into it first before we even look at Syccure, before we look at the product, because I think it's the most underlying, most important thing in the world. And before I ask you and I dig in, I will tell you, I am 53 years old. I am not fucking around with things that are not of monstrous outcome at this stage of my life. I'm not moved by money. I'm not moved by family. I'm not moved by outcome. I'm not moved by small things. I am only moved by an accumulation of every single thing that I've done to this point, and wanting to make sure that that's of service to wherever I end up doing right now, which in my case is Expert Dojo. In your case, I feel it's exactly the same. And I really want to dig into like the exits you've had before, the successes you've had before, the folks that you've been working with before, the experience that you have, because I feel like what you've come up with now, this technology, this is everything. It is singularly the biggest problem that companies are facing today on all levels, because with this not in place, it doesn't matter if they have a great product. It doesn't matter if they have good cybersecurity. It doesn't matter if they have good processes, systems, and everything else. It all falls down. So we're going to tease them a little bit and not dig into the product yet, but tell us about you, Thomas. Just bring us back. Let's spend 5 or 10 minutes just digging into the history of what you've achieved.
Yeah, it's a great intro, because I'm also 53. My wife says I have less patience now as I get older, but been there, done that, been around the block, and have very little patience for all the BS in between. When I was a TMT banker at CSFB, we were taking like 10 companies a day public, and some of the guys were really brilliant. One guy invented how to bend light. Like, he invented a process to bend light. I'm like, dude, you should be a billionaire on your own accord because you figured out something that no one's ever figured out how to do. But the bulk of the CEOs that we dealt with were just smart guys who were selling widgets in Indiana, and then they sold widgets in Chicago, and then they sold widgets in 10 states, and then they went public. It wasn't a miraculous formula. So when I left the street, I met a friend of mine who's a record producer in New York, and he had 650 FedEx packages in his hallway waiting to be picked up. 650 FedEx packages, $25 a pop. And I said, why do FedEx? He goes, I FedEx these DAT tapes, to all the advertising agency. And then they send me DAT tapes on Monday. And then I'm like, you could send that over the internet. So I built an advertising platform, which I thought was really creative. It worked great. I got him to use it, but then I couldn't get anyone else to use it because I didn't know anything about marketing and how to build customer segment and how to build customer fit. And so it took me about 6 months. I had spent all the money I had. I had literally no money left in the bank. I was my own salesman. And it took me about 6 months to start signing up radio stations. I eventually signed up 13,000 customers and sold that company to AdStream, which was like my first, real win.
Nice.
Yeah, it took me 4 years, but
brutal, but nice.
Brute force. I was buying engineers at radio stations trips to the Bahamas for the weekend, so I could get access to their to their server, so that I could show their boss how my software worked. That's a true story. I don't know if that's right or not, but
nice.
That's what I ended up doing. So I went from there, and after that I built an asset management company. I ended up selling that to partners a bunch of years later. We were the first layered fund of funds in the country. We built structures that I solicited the SEC and got approval, and then started raising funds for that. And then I built a commercial finance company, also heavily leveraged across technology. And that was unique because at least 10 of my friends told me we couldn't do it. No one had any idea how the paper would sell. And there was no common platform to do what we were doing. So I built all the tech from scratch. But we roofed that 0 to 100 million in about 5.5 years. We actually filed an S1 to go public in 2007, and then ran into the credit crisis in 2008 and sold to a private equity firm. But it taught me a lot. And the cornerstone of that company was me spending probably $2 million wrestling with who has access to what document, what forms and what information, because it's all very sensitive and you're under all the banking regulation guidelines. And so you're trying to collect all this information and disseminate it to, your underwriters and your sales team and your investors. But nobody's supposed to see it. And nobody, God forbid, can copy it or delete it or edit it or change it. And so managing that process to me became the bane of my existence. Even the sales roofed and the business roofed, and we did great. But we never really solved that problem. We built tons of one-off and kind of hacks and, made it work, but it was never really a solution, which got me thinking. After I sold that company several years later, I was talking to the CIO of a major investment bank, and he told me how when they offboarded employees, they had 4 sysadmins, all with the same spreadsheet, sit down and follow all of the same punch list to offboard that employee to make sure they couldn't get access to services anymore. And he's a great guy. He's a friend of mine to this day. And I looked at him and I said, don't you think you could automate that? He's like, well, maybe, but we don't know how. So we have 4 guys do the same thing, and that's what we do every time. I said, well, if it works, it works. And it got me thinking.
By the way, Thomas, they're not alone, right? That's everybody. There's literally
everybody.
I've actually never in my whole life come across a company, and I know so many folks. I know folks in like top consulting firms all the way. I have never met anybody in a company that has a robust and foolproof process to be able to manage this. It's just a nightmare.
There's good reason for that. Until 2-3 years ago, there was no commonality, even in programming language. So, run an enterprise, you could have 5,000 policies, 5,000 entitlement policies, and half are written in CNET or Python or Java. People write policy according to the application and the framework that they're working in, and then that sysadmin manages it. He doesn't talk to the other sysadmin in Hong Kong or the guy in London, or they don't. So there's all these little, what we call policy silos across organizations. And until a few years ago, there was no common language. So it was an insurmountable problem. And that started to change a few years ago with the introduction of what's called OPA, Open Policy Agent, which is an open source platform which graduated CNCF in 21. And that kind of kicked the wheels off, where Netflix and a lot of other big organizations adopted this open source policy language set of tools and libraries. And I looked at that and said, well, if we can all unite around one common language, then I could figure out the rest, which was pretty grandiose at the time. It took me 2 years, $1 million to figure out. But that led to Genesis. So there's good reason why we've never gotten here.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of at the bottom of the first inning. Right? We have a common language to use, but there's still really no platform. There's no dashboard. There's no integration to look across your 7,000 applications and 25,000 employees. So that's what we built. Yeah, till now.
Because it's so huge. And the thing is, spiders' webs are pretty easy because like everything is attached to everything and you kind of go across. This isn't a spider's web. It would be easy if this was a spider's web. You could like track
much
it.
Easier.
This is this is like walking into an old barn that you haven't been in 50 years. And there's like spiders' webs over here, and there's a bird's nest over here, and there's another couple of spiders down there, and then there's a few mice in a nest over there. And you have to somehow capture all of this and have them all speaking to each other so everybody knows and everything knows what's happening with everything else. So it's a huge task. And actually to do it in 2 years is phenomenal. And I think you brought in some of the greatest talent possible to get this done. Do you want to talk a little bit about the folks? What I find is when you have, I find this with Expert Dojo, which is just really beautiful, which is when you have a real huge vision, you attract people who are the kind of folks you want to attract, especially when you get past a little bit of a moment, right? And I believe the same thing has happened with you, whereby as it started to become more and more and more real, and people moved from, you can't do that, to,
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Hang on.
Yeah.
What you do?
Yeah.
You suddenly start getting the most brilliant people coming your way, and you bypass the mediocre folks that were never really going to be part of your team in the first place. Can you talk a little bit about how that team got built and kind of where it's taken you to now? Because it's very much a part of how good a system you've built.
It's candidly, I don't know if I appreciate that question because it's super embarrassing. Because everyone who works for me is smarter than I am. There's just no question. It's astounding. When I spent two plus years doing research, among my Rolodex and people, I spent 2 years working for the board of Gartner, like just kind of everything I'd ever done. And I developed this thesis of what I wanted to go build. And I started to talk to people about how conceptually it could be built. And I started cold calling cybersecurity PhDs, of which there aren't that many, all over the world. The Netherlands, London, here in the US, a couple dozen, Hong Kong, right? There's one guy in Singapore who's brilliant. And some of them are academics, some are in practice. But I'd call these guys and I'd finally get a call going and I'd pitch them on my thesis. And, the first 9 guys are like, it can't be done. It's too complicated. It's never going to work. You're going to have too many problems. It's going to take you 20 years. And then one of the guys I talked to here in the US, who was a PhD from Rice, was super brilliant, 15 pages of CV. And he said, look, I don't know how to do half. I don't know how to solve half of what you're talking about. But you want to write a retainer and start working on it for whatever, $500 an hour, then we'll start figuring it out and see what we can come up with. So that was the first time I opened my checkbook and started to really write checks and just kind of jawbone ideas. And that led to 2 years of build, break, and repeat of how we could potentially do it. And as we made more progress, we started to pull in different engineers, guys from Google, ex-Google guys, what have you, who had worked in Beyond Corp or had worked for Checkpoint or had worked wherever and had solved different pieces of the problem. And as I sat them down and I'd bring them to the team, I'd be like, look, you perfected doing X, Y, and Z. And we're going to build a gateway that looks just like that. But that gateway is going to be tied to these things over here. And we got another team of guys building that. And then people, like you said, became very excited, right? So once they saw where we were going, they became so excited that when 2021 came, I'd only raised about 300 grand. And I only had so much more money I wanted to put into the effort. And so in 2020, during COVID, I said to the team, look, I can't keep paying you all cash. So you're welcome to leave if you want, or I'll just pay you in stock, and you can work for stock if you're willing to do. Every single person on team's like, I'll work for stock forever. I don't care. Whoa. I don't need any pay. I'll work for stock. My wife makes enough money, whatever, I'll make it work. And so my whole team worked for a year and a half for stock, for just stock, which is
It's
great because
nice.
they're all on my cap stack, but they all live the vision. Like they can articulate as well as I can of we built a, language agnostic zero trust platform. Like, so
Zero trust platform. I just want to
yeah,
say it out loud and underline it for everyone so you understand the enormity of what we're talking about here. A zero trust platform is the absolute utopia of
it is.
just of I don't know, everything.
It is.
it's
And
the end point, right? If there is an end point, like in everything in life, of the meaning and significance of life, it is a zero trust platform.
and to be truly to have an organization or enterprise be really truly zero trust according to NIST definitions, a lot of other things have to happen. Like we don't make you zero trust, but in the entire zero trust framework, you get to that point of never trust, always verify, right? The Google doctrine, Beyond Corp, right? And that's the problem, because when you really look at the who, how, and what, if you've got 20,000 employees accessing 7,000 applications from 20 different countries and half are working remote, right? How do you always know who's entitled to do what in a constantly changing environment where one of my advisors is the CIO of a top 100 fashion company here in the US. And so around the holidays, he scales his infrastructure 3x, right? November, like October to February, call it, right? And it's all automated now, right? Infrastructure as code. So he scales up containers. And as you're doing that dynamically, think about it, you have to create all the permissions and entitlements and rules dynamically in this ever-changing and expanding environment based on your retail demand. It's insane. And he used to have teams of guys sitting there, figuring it out, right? And we figured out how to automate that because we're really policy as code. So we're delivering the ability to generate policy as code in this new infrastructure as code world.
Yeah.
And that's what got the C-class, like C-level attention.
No,
Does that make sense?
is huge. And at this moment, this is always a moment when some people say it, well, I want to explain it like a 5 or a 10-year-old would understand. I like to explain it like my best friend and I have been in the bar from like 5:30 watching the soccer, and it's now 11:30 in the evening, and I need him to understand. Okay. So here's what we got here. We got like large organization, big boss wearing a suit and tie. Big boss is sitting there with maybe 40 direct reports. 40 direct reports is sitting there with maybe 5 to 10 direct reports each. Now we're at like 400 people. We haven't even got to the staff yet. Like the staff will multiply out by another 100 times that, right?
Right.
All of these people are staying on average in the organization 9 to 12 months. That's all we get these days. I actually think that number is dropping down even less right now.
Yeah.
Even worse than that, because the organizations are under such pressure with great resignation, silent resignation, all these types of things.
Right.
They're having to promote people left, right, and center. So the person who was the IT engineer yesterday is now the CTO. And then the CTO suddenly needs to get moved into another position. So dynamically, the organization is changing in a way that it was just never made to be changed this way. And the people who are in charge of putting in place the systems that are managing the authorizations and just people getting in the front door, getting into the garage, getting access to entire databases, which if they were not in that position would contravene 100 different countries' privacy laws. Like, those folks, yeah, unfortunately, that person left their job and moved into another job 4 months ago. But because they left their job, they were so busy because they were right in the middle of a breakup at that stage, and their kid was going to college. So they were really distracted. So they forgot to click a button that would have actually done a bunch of stuff. So it's not just that this is hard to do. It's literally impossible to do. So the system that Thomas and his team have come up with is a zero trust system, a system that goes across multiple different systems that allows you to safeguard all of the authorizations for all of the people through this. Like, it's just really big. It's everything. No organization can have it. And I want to skip. I mean, first of all, am I on point with my 11:30 in the evening? We've already had a lot of beers explanation of what it does.
Yeah, we broke it down to who, what, and how. Right? Who is trying to get access to what? A service, a data, an application. Yeah. What are they trying to get access to? And then how or why?
Yeah. I was going to add
in the office.
I was going to add a who, how. Sorry, what was the second one?
Like who, what, and how, or
who, what,
or
and how.
Right?
I was going to say who, what, and how, and should he.
Well, that's the how is really all the context,
Yeah.
So
okay.
Why does Brian want to get to this, and is he supposed to? And is it, he's in the sales force. Why does he want to get to the financial numbers? And he's in the accounting team. Why does he want to see the sales numbers? Like, so that when you break it down that way, it becomes super simple.
Yeah.
But when you look at the contextual understanding, simply, right? So time of day, look, geo-center, geo-tracking, device, network path, like just the basic stuff. You can come up with a dozen different parameters. And if you're a math guy, you can quickly figure out that if you have 12 different parameters across 7,000 applications, you get, a gorillion variables.
Yeah. It's hard. It's horrible. Yeah.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And we worked on that problem originally with the Treasury, where one of our first patents was how to not only ensure the authorization parameters for someone to access a database, but then we built this iterative feedback loop in real time so that while they were in the database, we were constantly reevaluating the authorization entitlements of what they should and shouldn't be allowed to do.
Yeah.
And that was a real game changer, because until then, all of security kind of worked like a door. Like, can I get in and get access? Great. But once you were in, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
right?
You're in already.
And it was the Treasury and ultimately the CIA that got us thinking about, well, once they're in, how do I still know it's them? And how do I know things haven't changed? Or how do I know they haven't, there's no man in the middle, or their wife's not using their laptop, or all these crazy questions, which sound simplistic, but when you're trying to solve technically, become really complicated. Hence, I started to call PhDs and say, hey, I think we can solve this, but I don't know technically how to do it, because I don't have that skill set.
Yeah.
But your analogy is very good.
Until you did. And then, so if I'm following the natural sequence of questions that investors that are listening to this will be asking, they will start with the entrepreneur, it's flawless, it's awesome, like you've done it, you're there, passed, right? Then you move to the product. I don't need to talk about market size, do I? Come on, like this is everything. It's
universal problem.
It's it's $50 billion company. Like there's no question here. So the only logical place to go to next, which is a place of fear from an investor perspective, is the place of competition, and to say who's out there in the competition. But I will tell you, look, at the beginning, I thought it was the fact of your background and what you had done. That's like, this guy, there's no way he's going to do this unless like it's the big kahuna, right? And then I moved to the problem and solution. I'm like, oh my God, this is so huge that it overlies everything that's there. But actually, the competition is better than both of those. I'll tell you why I believe it's better than both. And then you can validate or argue against where my thoughts are. I love cybersecurity because it's like if you were a tennis player. I'll bring it to my game, right? Tennis, right? So it's like if you walked out on court and you're like, they hit the ball to you, and you like smash this forehand down the line, and then they hit another ball to you, and you like smash a forehand cross court, and then they hit another one to you and do a little drop shot, and then they hit another one to you, and you like pummel it down the line again, and they're like, whoa. And then they hit you backhand, and you're like, no. I don't do backhand. I just do. Could you hit it to my forehand again? Because I just do forehand. Like that's the level of the stack that I focus on. I don't do the. Yeah, somebody else does that other stuff over there. But give me a forehand, right? And then the next person is a backhand specialist, and the next person is a smash specialist and a volley specialist, and then the next person only serves. And that's the way protection of cybersecurity has been for like 50, 60 years. People only
Right.
focus on their area of the stack that they believe is going to be, and there's solutions within that area, as long as the parameters are followed, are generally awesome solutions that really
Right.
save us. But the problem is the bad guys and gals don't work like that. They come through all of the different layers and they come through all of the communication systems. And if there's anything that's open, that vulnerable point, even if it's not from this phenomenal provider here, it will still infect them and everybody else around them. So why do I love it? Because there's still tremendous opportunity in this space. And even in the space that you're in, which is getting to that zero trust area, everybody who's gone at it so far, and there's only 3 or 4 of them, they have all gone at it from the large corporations. It is the lazy way in the door, because even though they may feel that they're dealing with a 360 solution, they're only dealing with the 360 solution within the large organizations. The key here is to come in through all organizations by having a solution that every organization has got the ability and the accountability to check themselves. And that way, it rises up to the large organizations, but there is no vulnerable point of entry. And so I love that you've come in the
100%.
hard way and you're going for all organizations. You're democratizing the entire solution so they can do it. So maybe just speak to that a little bit and tell me kind of, am I on, off, where am I?
You're 100% on point. And I'll tell you, in the research, during my research, I did 2.5 years of research. And during my research, the first thing I realized was generally, definitely in software, guys want to build the $1 million. Everyone wants to sell a $1 million solution. I sell the Fortune 1000. It's costs $500,000 or $1 million. It's infinitely complicated, and it's going to take us 6 months to deploy. And when I started out building just really a true enterprise type solution. But what I realized is one of my advisors was one of the people on the team who wrote the cybersecurity maturity model for the government. He built the framework 2.5, 3 years ago. And we get these conversations about how, Raytheon has, 35,000 vendors. And what I realized was, JP Morgan and Raytheon and all these GE, nobody hacks GE. They hack one of the 200,000 vendors that's connected to GE now that we have this completely flat technology stack, right? Or they hack one of the vendors serving JP Morgan. So that thesis is fully intact. And if you really do the research on big hacks over the last 10 years, all of them have come from vendors that allowed a backdoor into a large organization, which belies the problem. The other thing we realized was that getting to a true zero trust model, you have to kind of organize all your data. You have to do all this work of how your data and your users are organized, and you have to build schemas around that. And NIST has written white papers, and Gartner's done tons of work on it. And it's great if you're Bank of America or a major money center bank, and you've got 110,000 people working in technology and can spend 3 years to do that. But if you're a $100 million company, you don't have any time to do that. You don't have the people, the talent. Nobody's a cloud security expert. People can barely figure out how to run Amazon AWS, right? Or Google Cloud or whatever. So you don't have the opportunity to do that, but you have all the same problems.
Yeah.
So my thesis kind of twisted. I kind of pivoted a little bit, and I said to the team, look, I'd like to deliver 80% of the ultimate level of functionality, but I want to do it for like 1/10 the cost. And in building that, we came up with a consumption-based model, which no one had ever done. Splunk did. It worked great. And when you think about Splunk now, you're like, oh, why don't I use Splunk? It's a consumption-based product. Everyone can use it. So we looked at this and I said, this is a universal problem. Everyone rolls their own. Everything is hard scripted and sucks. And everyone has problems with it. So let's build a simple model that is consumption-based pricing. And if you got 20 employees and they're logging on in the morning and logging off at night, you're going to spend a few $100 a year. Who cares? You got 25,000 employees, you may spend $1 million a year, but that's on you because you've got a big organization and it's very complex. So when I started to talk to my team about that, then we had to introduce all the KPIs and metrics of how we would build a consumption-based model to do this. And that's what led us to Block. And that's what led us to becoming much more integrated across the stack than we'd originally intended, but we get all these additional benefits, meaning it should be easy for people to manage entitlements, but the rest of your organization should know every time those entitlements change, and what impact it has on the rest of your infrastructure.
Beautiful.
And so to build that capability to synchronize that information and kind of the BPO around that, that probably took us 6 months and 5 prototypes to figure out
Beautiful.
to get it to work. Yeah,
I love it.
so that to me is the big difference. We're really building the sales force of cybersecurity, right? You had 3 sales guys and a secretary, and 6 people in an office. Works great.
Come on.
50,000 people across 50 countries. Works great. That's what we're trying to do.
I love it. So listen, if you're an investor and you're listening, for the love of God, look, come on, this is it. It's done. It's obvious, right? It's there. There's only one final question to take us to the last 5 minutes to really focus on. We're good with the team, great with the team. We're good with the product, great with the product. We're good with the competition. We love the competition. They help us, right? So now we get to the final point. It is ready. It is being deployed. It is being deployed now. 2023 is going to be the most epic year ever, right? And all we have to do is align the effort that goes out with making sure that the product continues to improve. So can you speak to 2 things, please? Because I think I've been really clear on just how I feel about this so far and what I feel an investor should be doing with regards to you specifically. All of your efforts so far has been on building a great product. And actually, here's the other thing I haven't mentioned. I don't care who you are, investor. You're not putting more money in than Thomas has already put into himself.
No.
We're talking about skin in the game on a level that isn't even funny anymore, right? So
I'm
now
1-1. I got 1-1 in.
Yeah. So there you go. Right. So everybody, what's at stake here. So talk to me about where you start with the traction next year and where you believe that can go. And then finish it off with, when you look 5-10 years in the future, what does this product look like?
So we dog fooded our solution this year. And I've got a handful of friends with, I want to say smallish, $10 to $20 million companies that have also dog fooded it with us, different use cases, different industries, but it got us to figure out all the different menus and drop downs and how to build a drag and drop functionality and all the other stuff we had to figure out. So we spent the year kind of really perfecting that. And now we're onboarding, kind of call it our first handful of alpha customers, which are all VC backed. They're doing, 5 to 50 million in revenue. They're all VC backed, great management teams, great guys in complex industries. Read shipping, legal, healthcare, medical, right? All different use cases. And we're learning a lot from that. But the beginning of next quarter, probably kind of end of January, we just signed, and now we'll onboard our first global enterprise customer, and truly global.
Nice.
First, they're based in Japan. They have 25,000 employees across 63 countries. They've got 9 different identity stores in 6 different countries. It's a mess. And when we were first introduced to them, and they started to talk about their problem, it was so overwhelming. I was like, I don't know if I can get involved. But it's a real litmus test for what we're doing. And we spent a lot of time with them explaining kind of how it should look. So we're going to onboard them Q1. That'll be our first global Fortune 2000 customer. And on the back of that, we have a Fortune 200 customer here in the US that is very advanced in the world of zero trust. They may be one of the most advanced organizations in the Fortune 500, but they're down to this critical problem, right? So even though they're so advanced in the world of zero trust, they still have this core issue of change control, entitlement changes, permissions, etc. And we talked for 20 minutes, and they're like, "I'm in." They want to move faster than we can move, and we showed them what we do, and they're like, they were blown away. Not to tout our own horn, but because we put it in a dashboard. We took 6 sysadmins and 4 engineers and 17 different applications to do what you're doing today. And we put it in one dashboard where you can kind of look at everything and it all makes sense. And we built we built analytics around that. So now you can visibly see what your solution looks like, and you can plug it into a SIEM system or a NOC or whatever, so that you don't have to then again manually relay, why did these entitlements change? And there's this call coming in from my SIEM system, and how much. So all of that gets automated, and that's what I think has got some of the bigger companies super excited.
I
So
love
yeah,
it.
we're going to raise capital now, so we can not only finish deploying and do more engineering, but so that we can build out the rest of our sales team and our marketing efforts to get big.
And how much are we raising now?
We're going to raise 2 million. We're raising a $2 million seed round. Two and a
Easy.
half if demand is there. It's it's not a lot.
Easy.
Um,
And
because
normally a company would be raising $5 million to build what you've built. Never mind after it's already being built. 2 million should be a walk in the park. There's like a dozen. I actually, funny enough, thinking of like 4 different VCs today that we're going to put you with. Listen, Thomas, for me, it was a no-brainer when we made the investment at the beginning. It's a no-brainer for the investment now. And for all investors that are listening to this, we've gone through all of the fundamental aspects other than actually going through the technology itself, which Thomas will be very happy to go through with you. This is
anytime.
it. This is not going to be a huge amount of time going through this with VCs. The deployment is going to happen. After the deployment happens, it's going to be a whole different ball game. And this terms and this offer is not going to be in place. So let's get moving. It's December. We're going to try and get this out by the end of December, which means by the end of January, we're going to try and get this closed so we can focus on nothing else other than deployment, and then get ready for a great Series A in May, June next year. And then we go to war. Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
Thomas, what have you got to finish everybody off? And can they also get your email address so folks can email you directly?
Sure. My email is thomas@syccure.com. We spell secure SYCCURE. I'll leave it on this. What we're super excited for in 23, besides signing the big enterprise customers, we got 20 alpha customers in the pipe. That's awesome. But what we're now solving from a technical standpoint are a set of tools to enable the small SMEs and SMBs to self-onboard. So in the world of cybersecurity, there's very little self-onboarding, right? Because it's insanely complicated. But we kind of looked at this, and we looked at the SMB and the SME market and said, look, again, you get 5, 10 million, 50, 100 million in revenue. You don't have the talent inside to really make a lot of decisions or figure a lot of this out. So how dumbed down can we make this so you could onboard yourself in 3 or 4 hours and still achieve all the functionality? And I believe, from what I know being in the industry now over the past 5, 6 years, that if we can turn that corner, that's going to be the game changer for us. Because I think by 2024, we'll have that figured out, and we'll get people to hit the site, swipe a credit card, download a shim, and boom.
I love it.
3 hours later, they're up and running. And that, in the world of what we're doing, is a real game changer.
And so right now, you've nailed 9:30 in an Irish bar on a Friday night, and the only thing we got to do is make it an extra 2 hours by 2024, and we have nailed the most. You cannot not work this out product. No, I love it, Thomas. Listen, investors, you got it. You got Thomas's details. I'm Brian at expertdojo.com. If anybody wants to have a diligence discussion with me, nothing I would be happier to do. Thomas, I'm grateful for you letting us invest in your company. I see it as a clear winner and something that we're going to celebrate for a long time in the future. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate the time and the opportunity.